Welcome to the Clean Power Hour Live. I'm Tim Montague, your host. Today is July 27th. Check out all of our content at cleanpowerhour.com. We bring you this live every Thursday, or the vast majority of Thursdays, usually at noon Eastern. Today we're at 12:30 Eastern, 11:30 Central, 10:30 Mountain, etc. But John and I were talking about getting eaten by bears in the pre-show. We're going to be dark next week, so take note of that, listeners. We will be dark next week, but we bring you 2 shows a week: pre-recorded interview with clean tech executives, a lot of solar battery storage, and then these lives every Thursday. So check it out, cleanpowerhour.com. Give us a rating and a review on Apple and Spotify, but most importantly, tell a friend about the show, because we are speeding the energy transition. Is that right, John Weaver?
Every single day I'm speeding it, starting around 8
Or
a.m.
are you just speeding?
I ride my bike. I can't go that fast, you know. Uh, yeah. And I'm in a rental right now because a tree branch fell on my car.
Are you
And it doesn't
serious?
allow me to go. Yeah, just a little branch, not a big one, not a terrible
Oh,
one. Uh,
it's
a couple
salvageable.
dents. Yes, more than salvageable. Oh, it's just a couple
I was going
pieces
to say your
fixed.
track
But
record with electric vehicles is not very good.
ever since first time I bought new cars, I'm now insurance company's worst nightmare. I don't know what happened to me. But yeah, I'm driving a gas car right now, which is weird. Number one, when you hit the gas pedal, it takes a while for those old dinosaurs to get moving. It's "Rrrr," then it gets going and it's nice. But you know, with my EV, you just touch it and it's swoosh and it starts to move. So this is new technology. This is not ancient technology, but older technology. And so it's interesting to be driving in a gas car again. But every other day, I am pushing along the energy revolution as best we can. So
Indeed.
yes, yes.
There's a lot to be happy about and hopeful about, right? The energy transition is happening, and it's going to happen whether you like it or not, frankly, whoever you are. I mean, most of our listeners are professionals who care about the energy transition, who work in solar, wind, and energy storage. But if you're a doubter or a hater, hey, I feel bad for you, because it's happening. There's this flood of a thing called money flowing into wind, solar, and energy storage, and there's no stopping it. That's the easy part. The energy transition is the easy part. The hard part is the trillion tons of carbon that we've accumulated in the atmosphere, John. And luckily, I don't blame you, but it's just a relic of having this good thing called fossil fuels, which we have to wean ourselves off of. But that's a big challenge. But that book that I referenced by Peter Zakowski, called Climate Restoration, makes it sound very not so complicated. He leans on 4 things. I can't rattle all of them off now, but he's coming on the show in just a couple of weeks. So look forward to seeing Peter Zakowski. Google him. He's got a great website. But so some of the technologies are putting iron in the ocean, right, to make algae grow more. It's a fertilizer for ocean-dwelling creatures. And creating stone out of CO2, just capturing direct air capture, right? Capturing it, turning it into to rock. But he thinks that this could be done for $1 billion a year. And so Elon could do it 200 times over and not have to lie about the range of his Teslas, which we're going to report on today. There is a Tesla range investigation that we're reporting on. We're reporting on the largest, most powerful wind turbine now operational. We're reporting on a webinar I held 2 days ago called The Best Practices for Improving Solar Asset Performance, with Brian Grenko, who's been on the show, and Matt Murphy of Greenbacker, and Dan Leary of Dinawatts. Dan, of course, has been on. We're reporting on this crazy story about flooding in California and climate risk, and the fact that Americans are apparently moving toward climate danger in search of cheaper homes. That was an interesting story as well on Bloomberg. But a lot of interesting news we're going to cover. Before we do that, John, I need to make just a couple more housekeeping announcements. Please take our listener survey. I want to hear from you, our listeners, because there's really no other way for us to know who you are and what it is that you really want to hear about on the Clean Power Hour. And I'm going to put the About Us page. So go to cleanpowerhour.com, go to the About page, and click on that big icon with the listener survey with the purple headphones. You can't miss it. And it's a Google form. It takes 5 minutes, and we really appreciate your feedback. So please take the listener survey. The other news is that we are going to be dark next week. I said that at the opening. We'll be dark. I'm going sailing and camping in Wisconsin in a lovely place called Door County on Green Bay, and then sailing in a regatta, not a regatta. I don't know if there is such a thing as a regatta. A regatta
Maybe you
is
should
just
make it.
most people don't know what a regatta is, John, because there's only about 5 million people that sail on a regular basis. But a regatta is just a sailboat race. And I race a boat called a Flying Scot, which has been around since the 50s. It's a one design, so they're all made the same, even though they were made in different decades. I have a boat made in the 70s, and I'm racing against boats made in the 90s and 2000s, and they're all pretty much the same stuff. So
Hey
that's,
Tim.
yeah.
So tell us, Tim, where were you last night?
Last night was a sailing adventure. I am an adventurer, and there was very high wind here in central Illinois. We have a beautiful lake called Clinton Lake. It's a power plant lake that was built in the 70s when they built Clinton Nuclear Station. That's I think it's a 1 gigawatt nuclear power station. And I soloed my boat. Normally we sail with 2 sailors, so you have enough ballast, enough weight. You know, the wind is pushing the sail, and if there's too much wind, the boat just wants to go over. Well, if you only have one sailor, aka Tim Montague, it goes over really easily. And I sailed for about 30 minutes successfully, but it was a nail biter of a sail, and then I capsized. And luckily I was about 100 yards from shore, and the wind just pushed me and my boat into shore, and I was able to keep the boat from really filling with water, and we were able to rescue it about an hour later with a motorboat from the club. So yeah, sailing is quite an adventure, and sometimes you end up in the drink, and that's part and parcel.
In the drink.
In the
I've learned
drink.
some new vernacular. I'm going to start using in the drink on a semi-regular basis.
The
now
other
if I
the other
can.
the other pro of sailing on a power plant lake is that the water's warm, because the nuke is heating that water. It's the cooling water for the nuke, and so it's not quite bathtub temperature, but it's pretty cozy and comfortable. So it's not a bad experience being in the water. I always just wonder if I'm getting irradiated. I have not seen any data on if radioactivity leaks into the cooling water. Of course, Exxon will say that never happens, but
Of course.
I know otherwise. But you got to take chances.
All right, can I tell you what my favorite thing that happened this week was, Tim?
Yeah,
Meyer Burger announced a 2 gigawatt solar cell factory
I
in
was
Colorado.
wondering if you were going to bring that up. Is that on
in
the
a
docket?
former, that's on the docket. It's in a
Okay.
former Intel building.
Yeah.
They specifically said they are coming because of the IRA, and it's going to be a relatively quick ramp up to 2 megs because they're going to use machines that were going to be installed in Germany and redirect them to the United States, so they don't have to reorder the hardware and the manufacturing of this manufacturing line. And so the United States is getting a 2 megawatt, and the press release said very specifically they're already exploring additional properties and they didn't say like advanced talks with nearly ready to sign deals, but they did say they're pretty far along with talks with new customers for new offtake agreements so that they can expand. So who knows how
Yeah.
much Meyer Burger goodness will
Yeah,
have.
it's interesting. And so the Europeans' concerns that the IRA is going to steal jobs from Europe is the legitimate concern.
Right
That's
here.
effectively what's happening here. But it's a PV Magazine story. It's on screen by none other than John Fitzgerald Weaver. And I don't know if this is a rendering or an actual photo, but
It's a real photo with
Colorado
some touch-ups on the
Springs,
building.
right?
Yeah, say again?
It's going to be in Colorado Springs.
Colorado Springs, yes. So this is a real photo of the structure, which has a tiny bit of rendering touch up, the name and everything like that. but this is what the site looks like. I saw a video of Gunter, who's been on our show, and we
Yeah.
had a great conversation with him of him driving through driving into the business development in Colorado Springs. It was cool. He shared it on Twitter, and
Oh,
so
very cool.
it was nice to see. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So there's a tax credit called 45X, which is part of the Inflation Reduction Act that they're taking advantage of. I'm not familiar with 45X, but what is 45X?
Well, I got to double check, but it might be the solar manufacturing tax credit IRA, and I believe for manufacturing they are gonna. Well, I have to double check, but there is at least one tax credit for solar manufacturing where, and I mentioned it in the article, where they'll get about four, and it's right in the middle. So as part of the IRA, solar cells manufactured in the U.S. get 4 cent per watt tax credit, while modules get 7 cents per watt.
Yeah.
So that's 11 cent for module plus solar cell. Now there's other tax credits for manufacturing facilities that are clean and for specific reasons. Like if you build a heat pump factory, you could get an incentive for the heat pump factory. I don't know if they're getting money for the actual facility itself to upgrade it, but I'm just not certain on those things. So, but they said there's 9 figures of tax benefits potential coming, and that's a lot of money. 9 figures spread over the life of the factory through 2032. And if you say this is a 16 megawatt factory and it's getting 11 cents per watt, that covers some of it. That's like almost all the tax credits right there. Is that 7 cents plus 4 cents times 16 gigawatts? So good luck, man.
It seems like to get the domestic content adder of the ITC, you pretty much have to have made in America solar cells, do you not?
Solar cells, yeah.
Yeah.
And like for instance, the way the IRA is worded, it says that when considering the domestic content volume, and there's some nuance here, but for like a module, they would look at the final object and then the pieces that made it up. So, and
Yeah.
next major step. So solar cell counts, but solar wafer doesn't count. So you got to be able to make the module, you got to make your solar cell in the US. And now, again, having a solar panel doesn't make you approved necessarily, because you have to have 40% of your manufactured goods be domestic content. So let's just say your solar panel is only 39% of your domestic content, or 39% whatever, and you don't have any other domestic content stuff, you wouldn't get it. So your project for manufactured parts, non-steel, non-iron, manufactured, has to be 40%. And so all the smart people who are doing the spreadsheets, I keep hearing them whisper, if you don't have the modules, it's going to be really, really hard. But I've also heard other people whisper that you might be able to get to 40% without the module, say with racking, with your inverters, with your switch gear, with other equipment. And so, and when I say racking, I don't mean ground mount racking, because that's seemingly structural, which is 100% requirements. So yeah. I'm talking about rooftop racking, which is a little more complex. It's a manufactured good, or at least we'll see how it's defined when it moves forward. So yeah, I'm super excited that Meyer Burger's here. Super excited. We had another person that was on our show, Timothy, from the Great North. Helion has announced a new facility as well. I believe 1.25 megs or gigs. 1.5 gigs, somewhere in that range, and it's in addition, and it's modules and cells. So they themselves are going domestic content, and they just made an announcement. They raised the cash. Somebody helped raise the $150 million for them recently.
And where's that factory going? Because they have a factory in Florida
Minnesota.
And they have a factory in Minnesota, right?
From what I saw in the Reuters article, it's going to be located in Minnesota. I've not heard anything about the hardware that they purchased in Florida. Okay. So I'm wondering if that's going to turn into something real, or if those machines were just too old and it's just not worth it. Yeah. I don't know. They'll see. So
yep.
So it's cool. We got module factors left and right, dude. Up and down, left and right.
Chris Letman has a comment. CEA mentioned yesterday that it is not clear if aluminum will qualify. It is not excluded, just not mentioned. Isn't all rooftop racking made from aluminum?
Yeah.
No,
Well,
it's not.
so not all. You're right.
Quite a
You know,
bit of it
like
is made of steel.
some of it's plastic. If it's
Yeah, some
steel,
of it's
then
plastic, but like panel claw is a lot of steel, isn't it?
I don't know that off the top of my head. I know
I do.
my residential racking
It's made
is
of steel.
aluminum. Okay, well then we know for panel cloth.
Aluminum's too expensive.
But aluminum's light. Residential racking is almost all aluminum. So I don't know
Yeah.
about commercial racking. Commercial racking is a little more complex. But I had a conversation with a racking company, a Canadian group who's moving it, who does sells into the U.S. Really smart group, and they're trying to figure out how to get their stuff domestic content. I connected them with Norton Rose Fulbright, who's the CPA, who's the legal firm who does a lot of this analysis, and I listened to a show from Norton Rose Fulbright on racking and talking about it, and it's still not fully known. I've asked about this. If you can argue that the racking is manufactured versus just plain steel, and maybe manufactured, it could be called because there's lots of cuts, and because it's very customized, and because it's used as grounding. Yay, yay. What do you think? Do you think if it's grounding, then it could be counted as manufactured? That's a question that we're going to have argued. And, you know,
I'm you lost me there, John. I have to be honest. I'm not sure why racking isn't manufactured. I'm not following you.
well, ground mount racking isn't considered manufactured goods. So it doesn't count toward the 40%.
I don't know. I think Nextracker would beg to differ.
So it's very clear in the IRA. Ground mount racking is considered structural material,
Yeah.
not manufactured goods, and all structural
Oh.
has to be 100% domestic content. So
Okay.
that's why you hear Array Technologies and Nextracker,
Yeah.
their steel pipe tubing and piping,
Yeah, and
or their
Panaclaw's
torque tubes.
talking this up too. Their steel is made in America.
So yeah, so I think if it's steel and it's in racking, it's 100%
Yeah.
made in America, which is separate from the 40% manufactured goods. So that's where you hear me trying to look for a loophole for commercial rooftop, because if we can get racking as part of the 40%, then it limits the risk of having to get modules to get to the 40%. Now, if racking is just considered 100%, then so be it. And that'll be it. So anyway, that's enough of the IRA. We'll have a more fine-tuned talk at some point. Thanks,
Yeah.
Chris.
Well, speaking of Colorado, I am going to be in Boulder for the ACES. It's called the ACES Gateway to Solar Conference. And there'll be thousands and thousands of energy professionals there convening for the ACES conference. I look forward to meeting anybody who wants to meet me. So reach out to me. And then we're going to do a live with none other than Sean White, who is the master NABCEP trainer and host of the Sean White Solar and Storage podcast, who's now on the Clean Power Media Network, cleanpower.media. Check that out. And so anyway, we can look forward to that on August 10th, and the link is in the show notes. So check it out. That is going to be at our normal time, 11 a.m. Central, noon Eastern. And I have a couple other announcements. I didn't quite finish the announcements. Oh, Aurora Empower. Okay, August 16th. Check out Aurora Empower. I'm going to be on a panel with the founder of Helioscope. Talking about the
Paul?
IRA. Paul Grana. So
Paul
check
Grana.
that out. And then I got to get back to my announcements section. Oh, we are actively looking for sponsors. We're grateful for the corporate sponsors that we have, especially CPS America, otherwise known as Chint Power Systems, and Dinawatts. But we are very actively looking for additional sponsors. So please check out our media kit. Just go to cleanpowerhour.com and click on media kit, and you will see what I'm talking about. We're also doing a lot of events and I'm going to show the events tab here on screen. These are webinars, panel discussions with seasoned solar professionals and subject matter experts. We just hosted Improving Solar Asset Performance with Matt Murphy, Brian Grenko, and Dan Leary. And that recording is going to publish on August 8th. So you can look forward to that. There'll be a link to a pre-release version of that in the show notes from today's live. So check that out as well. And then you see our previous event here with Davi Wilson and Aaron Helini. So if you're looking to create branded content, we would love to host a webinar for you on anything related to solar energy storage, wind, the clean energy transition, electrification of transportation, all those good things. All right. We can move on to the news, John. What do you want to cover next? You can pick.
Well, I mean, I don't want to knock Elon anymore, but I guess we brought it up. We should talk about it. It's not a surprise that Tesla has people focused on range complaints. And one of the things I learned in my Tesla is that the main range number that they show you only works if you're doing like 55 miles an hour and the heating isn't on. And you would hope that the car would learn after a while when you got in the car and stop BSing you. There was one way to mitigate this information being flaky though. And it used to be, and of course I haven't had a Tesla for a year and a half and their software constantly updates, but there used to be a table hidden within the menus where you could find your way to a different range table, and it only showed a graph. It gave you a number like 300 miles to go. But it showed you this graph in your trajectory, and it showed a real range number. And that table always fixed me when I was in a challenge where I was like, oh, I might not be able to get where I want to go. So I would bring that table up and it would help. And so maybe that range tool could be one that's a good solution. And so I'm not surprised that it turns out that Tesla has a bunch of people pushing people, canceling their appointments, saying your range is good and just pushing it on. Because it wasn't that the range was broken, it's just that the software was crappy at managing it. And so, Tesla is the PR king.
Yeah, I mean, I was very critical of my Model Y for this. And this is a Reuters special report. So just Google Reuters and Tesla secret team. The title is Tesla created a secret team to suppress thousands of driving range complaints. My complaint was the computer would lie to me. It knew where I was going. It knew what the weather was. It knew how cold it was and how much it needed to use the heater, et cetera, et cetera. It's not rocket science. I mean, the dude can do rocket science. That's hard stuff. This range stuff is not rocket science. And so I thought the computer was lying to me because it would say, oh, you have 280 miles of range, and then I only had 250. Well, those 30 miles, they made a difference. And, I did have some very close calls. I never got stranded, so all good. But I think, what this shows is that Elon does have this kind of dark side. Now, we all have a dark side, and so Elon is no different in that regard. It's just that he happens to be also the wealthiest man on earth, and he has no really reason to make these petty, what do you want to call it? Gamings of the system, so to speak, right? Anyway,
yeah, you would hope.
It's not good for consumers. It's not good for the energy transition. It feeds the FOMA. FOMA. That's not the expression I'm looking for, but
yeah,
all right,
we'll
let's.
We know what it meant. We know what you meant, so we get it, Tim. We're there.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, yeah, that wind turbine. I know that we've reported on this story in the past.
But can we talk about it again? Because it's the biggest.
I know. The biggest wind turbine ever invented by humanity is now operational. And now that's on screen. Largest and most powerful wind turbine. Sorry? Where's that?
It's in a hurricane region off the coast of China. It's specifically put in a super aggressive windy area that has.
Oh,
I guess it's not hurricanes over there. It's not tsunamis; those are waves. It's typhoons. It's in a strong typhoon region, and it's
yeah.
like a, oh, so that they actually have it. So first, wind speed regularly exceeds 51 kilometers an hour, which is considered category level 7. But this unit made by this company, it's a 16 meg unit. It's specifically able to stress to handle typhoons. And this specific unit, they even mention it. In its short time, the field has already survived stresses from Typhoon Talim, which
Okay.
caused, so it is a typhoon customized unit, a high wind, high stress unit. And it just so happens to be the largest in the world. It's, it's pretty cool. It's the first 16 megawatt unit, and it's being thrown into a great place. It's cool to see how they're installing them, and they just sit up, and the the
Yeah, the diameter of the rotor is 260 meters, 853 feet. That's almost 3 football fields.
what's the length of a single? I want to see the length of the units of
The blades?
the blades. Come on, give me a blade length here.
I don't
Diameter.
know. But that
Stats.
figure there is just astounding. The diameter of of the rotor. Yeah,
Five
crazy.
five
And
hundred and 80,000 square feet, which is about what 12 acres. That's the swept area. 13.3 acres. So when it spins around, it covers 13.3 acres, Tim. How much solar can we put in? We could put like 3 megawatts of solar
yeah,
within
exactly.
the area. That's
Yeah,
so cool. It's
yeah.
a 3 megawatt solar power plant spinning. You know what? If we can make these things just face the sun and spin at the same time, do you think we can do that, Tim? We could have a solar
Eventually, why not,
wind.
right? Why not make the surface of the wind turbine be photovoltaics too? I say do it.
Jeez,
It
that's pretty
it'll
cool.
it'll happen someday if we don't completely snuff ourselves out with AGI or something like that. Um, Speaking of snuffing ourselves out,
Yeah.
I want to talk about this story, which was flooding in California. An assessment of California dam infrastructure and the geologic record do not bode well for California. The trillion-gallon question: extreme weather is threatening California's dams. What happens if they fail? So this is a New York Times story from last weekend, and they've got this amazing aerial photo of this the flow, the overflow from a dam, which is just really cool.
You still have the turbine up.
Oh, sorry.
Turbine
There we
output.
go.
There we go.
And but
Whoosh.
anyway,
Look at that. Cool.
and
That's
there
so
is an
cool.
audio version of this story also, so check that out. New York Times, the trillion-gallon question. But the long and short of this story is that the climate is changing, John. And so the way they've been designing dams is they look back 50, maybe 100 years and they go, well, how did things go in the past? Well, guess what, guys? Things are different now. There's more frequent flooding events. And this was the point made on the webinar on Tuesday also by Brian Grenko, that when you are doing your performance model for your solar array, you have to be careful because the weather model is using historical information. Now things are different. It's hotter, right? And there's more rain events and there's smoke events, et cetera, et cetera. So the world is changing. But when they looked at the geologic record, which can show when there was like really enormous flooding events off the coast of California, they found that sometimes the events occur like a 1-2 punch where you'll have 2 really wet years. And the infrastructure is not designed to handle that whatsoever. And so California is in for a world of hurt, apparently. That's basically the prediction here. And they've had some events in the not distant past which were very intense. I mean, California had a very wet spring this spring. which they needed because they were in a drought before that. But anyway, um, yeah,
Well,
this
you know,
this was quite a eye-opening story. And oh, there's another shot of that dam. That is just beautiful. What were we going to say? Or of
well,
a dam spillway.
I was gonna say that a lot of people moving to Texas, a lot of people moving to Florida. Florida just had another home insurance company pull out of the state. I think I saw that 175,000 homes were insured by this company, and and we're gonna have, and it's probably happening already. But wow, I mean, it is a gorgeous image, by the way. It was just one before it goes away. But we're going to
Yes.
have a real estate challenge soon, and I don't know how exactly it'll play out, but we'll go from the thing that only people with cash will be able to own real estate in certain areas, because a bank won't give a mortgage on a thing that they can't insure. And if they can't insure it because it's in Florida and there's no local insurance companies available, and the state of Florida insurance company goes dunk, it's going to be cash purchases. And if it's cash purchases, it's not being fueled by the money creation process of what a mortgage is, because mortgages are literally created money out of the air.
Yes,
If
they
we're
are.
not if we're not doing that, then there's going to be a real estate valuation issue, and it's going to be interesting to watch. It's going to be interesting to watch how this happens. I got a brother. He lives in Austin. He's like, John, I want to move to Boston. He goes, it's so hot. I don't know what to do. It's so hot. Um, you know,
Yeah.
we're gonna
Well, in a
have.
related story, Bloomberg has a story which is now on screen, or it should be. Um, Americans are moving toward climate danger in search of cheaper homes. Migration to places at high risk from heat, floods, and fires rose over the last 2 years, a new analysis by Redfin finds. And this is on Bloomberg. I tried logging in. I have a subscription now, but it still doesn't want to show the full story. But um,
You gotta hit refresh. You gotta hit a account. Looks
okay,
like you got an account. Do you have an
I
account
got to
there?
learn how to use the internet, John.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they're not. They don't have you logged in right there. I can tell. Click on your account. Something's off. My content. Looks like you have one. Well, we'll figure it out. You'll learn next time. We'll trust you, Tim. We'll trust you that you bought an account. We're not going to tell. But one of our next stories is from Bloomberg. So if you don't really buy an account, they're going to get upset at you and they're going to find you.
So people are moving to places like Arizona and Florida and Texas because they can more easily afford a home there. But there's climate change, right? There's water shortages, there's heat waves. I mean, the Southwest has been in a major heat wave for the last 3 weeks, and so it's a double whammy. These fast growing places are going to be severely impacted. And every time I run into somebody who says I'm moving to Arizona, I just go, "Have you thought about the water situation? Have you thought about the heat?" I mean, I don't know that any good job is worth that. Um, and that was interesting to hear your brother commenting about Austin, right?
Yeah, I mean, he said it was six figures for X number of days. And he was saying, John, do you have any friends in Boston I can move in with?
What
I
was
was
six
like,
figures? The thermometer?
yeah, not six figures, three figures. I'm sorry.
That would be
Thinking
really
base out.
scary.
Yeah, yeah, that would be a different thing. That would be the destruction of the universe type stuff. Yeah, so three figures, and he's from Florida, grew up in Florida, but it's a different type of hot. Florida, our temperature's not as hot as Texas, but we have humidity that's massive and 24/7 and 3/4 of the year. But
Right.
it's changing. It's changing. We this year we've had this summer some of the worst heat waves our planet has ever seen. This summer, I mean, ongoing last 2 weeks.
Mm.
Heard a really sad story. Some gentleman was in Furnace Creek, which is what surrounds the Death Valley sign. He hiked from his car to Furnace Creek, gave an interview, hiked back to his car, passes away on the way back because of the heat. And it's like, oh, it's like, what's going on? I don't know. There was a picture Maybe we showed it last week, but it was of people who worked for the state at Death Valley, and they're pointing at the sign as it says 132. And the joke on the picture was, look at the dinosaurs celebrating the comet. And it's like, it just hurts. And people
Yeah.
are dying. A lot of people are dying now. So we got to get back to work. That's it. We got to get to work, Tim. Next story.
Yeah.
Got to educate our
Project
people.
of the week. That is one wacky looking solar project.
This is the best project of the week, Tim.
That is nuts.
Now I'm going to give him one positive. Let's zoom in on this.
Is this
Let's
in
give
China?
it-
Where is this?
I don't know. Eastern Europe, Central Europe. That's I'm going with Central Europe. I have no idea where it's at. I just know that exists.
They get an A+ for going all in. Okay, you got to hand it to them. They get a B- on the aesthetics, but hey,
But
they're
here's
all
one
in.
good one though.
They're missing a panel too. They need one more solar panel up there on the wall, in the upper right hand corner. They got the racking for it, but no solar panel. I guess that
Yes,
one
they
fell
did.
off.
As a couple of people
Probably
made
killed
that
the
joke as
cat
well.
too.
Killed the cat, absolutely, absolutely. One thing that I wanted to make a joke about that I thought was kind of neat is if you look at it, you can't see any wires. The wire management's pretty good.
Maybe they're wireless solar panels.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that
maybe.
be awesome if we could have wireless solar panels? Somebody's got to invent that.
Yeah. I mean, we're doing wireless solar in space.
Tesla was trying to invent that. He failed, but he was trying. Maybe Elon will get it.
Yeah. I mean, we have we have solar panels hooked up to microwave devices,
Right.
and then they can transfer that energy in space. So we do have
Yeah.
rough versions of that in space. So there's that.
It would just not be economical probably to do it here on the ground. The copper wire is just a more economical way of doing that. So for the foreseeable
Much cheaper.
future, copper works, or aluminum for that matter. Aluminum, most people don't realize aluminum is a very good conductor and super abundant.
So that's project of the week.
Nice.
You can do it, Tim. I believe in you.
I still want to know where that is.
I'll do some work. I'll find out. I'll go click around. Let's see what we can learn.
So 389 gigawatts of solar in 2023, says Solar Chase in a new note. Yeah, we're approaching 400 gigawatts of new solar in 2023. That is now well established. China is surging. I think China is doing like 150 gigawatts a year. That's all of the solar in the United States, John. In 1 year, they're installing that in China now.
Actually,
that
if we
crazy?
go, I know it's crazier. Actually,
It's crazier.
yeah, it's crazier because Jenny Chase, she's the one that I noticed this. Let me find her tweet real quick. But she's the one that because I follow her and her boss. This is Jenny's boss, Rob. Nobody's Jenny's boss. But in Jenny's tweet, she goes,
You can't
we
call them
had
tweets anymore, though, can you?
whatever, I'm calling them tweets. Jenny said, we had an uncharacteristic attack of courage and increased China's new build forecast to, give me a drum roll, Tim, what number do you think China is now forecast to build in 2023?
It's not
Pick a
150.
It's not 150, Tim.
It's more.
It's a lot more.
180.
Nope, keep going.
200.
A little bit more.
What?
209 gigawatts DC, Timothy. 209. You know how much the world
So
capacity
China's
was last
installing
year?
half of the solar in the world.
More than half, but yeah. Yep,
Yeah.
that's it, dude.
But the world is
That's-
installing a lot of solar. It was funny. I heard an interview with I think it was a woman from BNEF. I can't remember her name. Yeah, maybe it was Jenny Chase.
It's Jenny.
And
yeah.
and she was like, yeah, I don't really pay attention to the U.S. I mean, no offense, but you're a minor market, right? You're less than 10% of the market. And I was like, yeah, I'm with you. I mean, if I weren't American, I wouldn't pay too much close attention to it either. I guess unless I'm Meyer Burger and I want to make a bunch of solar cells.
Yep. Yep.
And I don't want to do that in China because they had a bad experience, I think. Um, but
So
it's so weird how big the Chinese market is compared to the U.S. market. I mean, okay, sure, our population is a third of theirs, but they're installing what more than 5x.
yeah. Yeah. And they're
I
I mean we're
consider
gonna
that
do
to be
30
a
gigs.
national security disadvantage. Like, because if your grid is green, right, and it's fueled with wind and solar, that means you can free up resources to do other things, like go to space, like go to Mars, like create AGI or whatever, right? That stuff takes money. That's what I think. I'm not
And
I'm not trying to
and
predict what?
and when you get into warfare type stuff,
Yeah.
if stuff
Yeah.
happens, you have to deal with it. You know, the world is complex. Europe right now is suffering from a wartime energy attack. Like literally,
Yeah.
they're being attacked, and it's what happens. This is the world still works this way, Tim, and to be not only strategic, but financially and state defense. I mean,
Yeah.
it's two things, and it's two things we gotta think about. Um, and it's challenging. It's real challenging.
So Joe calls them Zeets. And kudos to Joe for having the coolest icon on YouTube. I love your background image with the sunflowers and the solar and wind turbines. Very, very sexy.
Zeets might come over. We'll see.
Now you just need to create an agrivoltaics company, Joe, because it's clear that you're chomping at the bit to work for an agrivoltaics company, and they don't exist for the most part. So,
No.
uh,
You got to call Blue Wave, Joe. Call Blue Wave.
yeah,
Tell them you're a farmer. Tell them you can get farmer leads and you can help them develop projects. Blue Wave is the number one I know of in the U.S. And Blue Wave is growing. They need teams in Illinois and across wherever there's a community solar market. There's going to be a job for for an agrivoltaic person if Blue Wave is there. So Blue Wave is great. They're smart. I love their blueberry system up in Maine. I want to go visit. Have some blueberries with Tim. I'll send them to Tim so he can go eat them in the woods.
so
I
you
guess
really
you'll
want to talk
find
about
berries.
carbon capture?
Yeah, so let's talk about
Is
it a
this
little
from
bit.
a
But
is
then
this from a smokestack of some kind, or what is
I think
the?
it's a gas plant. I think it's a gas
Yeah.
plant carbon capture. So there's a gas plant in California. They're seeking to capture 95% of the emissions. So that's really what the headline is. Nobody cares about it costing 25 million except for the guy on commission. But the project is seeking to capture 95% of its emissions. And Tim, if this was 75 years ago and every gas and coal plant could capture 95% of their emissions, we'd be okay. We'd have like another 400 years to mess around and figure out solar technology and stuff like that. And before we needed to clean it up, at least from an emission standpoint, it would still pollute. There'd still be, gunk coming out of cars and whatever else. But
That's the
95,
problem. That's the problem with carbon capture. Is it gives the fossil industries more runway. It on a
true.
local basis, it's good. I agree. Capturing 95% of the carbon from a power plant like this, that would be a good thing. The problem is there's this thing called 45Q in the IRA, which I reported on. My dad wrote an article, so check that episode out, Peter Montague. It's called The Poison Pill in the IRA. And these incentives make it lucrative for fossil companies to capture carbon, liquefy it, and run it through a pipeline to places like my home state of Illinois, and attempt to bury it in the ground, hoping that it's going to stay there. That's the thing, John, is what happens to the carbon and can you actually keep it where you say you're going to put it? And we have no really credible evidence that that works. So and the pipelines are risky, right? Because if a pipeline breaks, then you're sitting in a bubble of heavier than air gas that will asphyxiate you. You can't see it, you can't smell it, and you die. And so it is a risk. So we have 60,000 miles of these pipelines planned in the United States. Most people have no idea how big this 45Q business is. It's big. And the fossil companies love it. So on the other hand, we do need to do direct air capture, right, to get that trillion tons of carbon pollution that's already in the atmosphere and turn it into things like stone.
So when I posted this story on Twitter, I made a comment that I still don't trust sequestration of carbon, CO2.
Yeah.
And I then had two gentlemen who work in the industry, and maybe we should bring them on the show so that they can, pitch their story. But I had two gentlemen jump on my case and say, "What's wrong with you, bro? You don't trust stuff. You need to wake up." And, my number one argument that I don't know if I'm right about, it's just my fear. I don't know crap about the industry, but it comes from fracking, or not fracking necessarily, but the storage of the fracking liquids as they're injected underground at super high speed afterwards, and they cause earthquakes. And earthquakes mean that the ground is shaking and things won't necessarily stay down there. So if we're going to push so much CO2 that the volume is just massive, do I trust the human beings doing it not to oversell these sites and not to BS things? And then do I trust the fossil fuel industry not to lie about the viability and the efficacy of these technologies and whether or not they're actually going to help us or just help the fossil industry keep working? So, my issue number one is I still don't trust sequestration. I would love for us to figure out how to make use of the CO2. For instance, can we rip it apart or smartly mechanically take it apart and make use of the carbon in carbon nanotubes? I don't know if that's possible. Carbon CO2. So there's two carbons, one oxygen. Is that oxygen? Can we use it without it being risky to grab? I'm not certain. So I'm just nervous about sequestration. And these two guys, argued with me for a while and told me how wrong I was. And maybe I am. I hope I am. I hope we figure it out with CO2. But I don't know. Sequestration doesn't do it for me yet. As well, carbon capture is a cash cow for the fossils to continue selling fossils. And
yeah, it took me a long time to differentiate these two things. One is called CCS, carbon capture and storage, and one is called CDR, which is direct air capture. So they're very analogous, and they do result in, taking carbon, in one case, out of a smokestack, or in the other case, out of the atmosphere. It's a little harder to do it out of the atmosphere because it's in lower concentrations in the atmosphere. Whereas in a smokestack, there's a lot of it, right? When you burn natural gas, there's a lot of CO2. But if you're not converting the carbon to something that will stick around for a very long time, meaning a rock, then it's problematic. And for the most part, CCS is compressing it into a liquid and then pumping it into the ground and then praying that it stays there. And we just don't understand the Earth's geology well enough to know that. But let's talk about this AES story, John. This is a good story. This is a very good story, and we only have 10 more minutes. Replacing coal plant with largest energy storage project in Indiana. At least I think it's a good story. This is a story by you. What is the storage technology while I get this on screen?
Lithium phosphate.
Just lithium iron phosphate?
Batteries. Yes, that's it.
Love it. There's the site. Yeah, I mean, these coal facilities are nasty things. They've got coal ash ponds, where they're just dumping the ash in a pit in the ground, basically, and praying. And you notice it's on a river, John? They
Yep.
put these plants on rivers for two reasons. They need cheap transportation of coal to the site, which they use barges for, and then they need cooling water to cool the plant down because it's this huge, ginormous, hot, fiery machine. Anyway, this is a good thing, right? Because we're converting these plants to batteries, solar,
And this,
wind. Is there a renewables aspect to this?
so for this specific story, no, but for this facility, yes. So this plant is a four turbine, four power plant coal facility that started in the 60s into the 70s for construction. The first two have been shut down, so there's still two more coal turbines. And this battery was hooked up to one of those coal interconnection points. So there's still another available interconnection point. And then the two coal, I believe, are being converted to gas in 2025. And then eventually, I don't know if it's within their planning yet, but eventually the gas will be turned off. But there's also a solar facility nearby. I didn't cover it for this story. I just focused on the battery.
Yeah.
But coal's going away. So and the second coal turbine shut down at the end of May. So a month and a half ago. This battery facility, will turn on before the end of next year. So 200 megs of beautiful, beautiful.
And this is a
battery.
story that's repeating itself dozens and dozens of times around the U.S. Vistra has a whole fleet of these plants, some of them in Illinois. They're the largest battery owner. They own the Moss Landing project in California that's been in the news a lot. But they have a fleet of coal plants here in Illinois that they're converting to solar and battery. Excel, of course, is doing this. I mean, and they're doing this really because of the economics. And of course, the IRA helps, right? With the ITC on storage, you can do standalone storage. You don't have to pair it with with a solar array or a wind farm. Yeah.
I like the idea of putting all kinds of stuff at coal facilities to make use of those interconnections. I know
Yeah,
that-
and the huge substations, right? It's not easy to build those substations. That's long lead time equipment.
Yep. It's cool. It's cool to watch. Cool to watch the transition. What's interesting is that I guess you can charge this battery fully from a gas plant because of the new IRA. As well, this coal plant's going to get at least this battery's getting at least a 40% tax credit because it's on land of a retired coal plant. Indiana does have the nation's largest solar plant being built. I think about 1.3 gigawatts. So
Yes, that's
that's
right.
pretty cool.
What is the name of that project?
That is
Mammoth.
the Mammoth. Yes.
Yeah, and it is Mammoth. 15,000 acres, John. A 15,000 acre solar project.
That's really big. That's really big.
Crazy big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
And
ginormous.
yet, just remember, if you're a prosumer listening to this, I mean, I think most energy professionals realize this, but if you're a consumer, you may not realize we only need 1 to 2% of the landscape, right, to completely green the grid and decarbonize the economy. So we're not going to pave over the breadbasket with solar and wind farms. It's just a blip on the screen, actually. We already have 6% in roads and buildings. So what's another 1 or 2, right? So then we go from 6, even if we didn't do any on the built environment, which of course we're going to do, and brownfields like this power plant, we go from 6 to 8%. Like, that's not a big deal. We're swimming in real estate.
We have it. We have a lot. We have a lot of opportunities for land. I actually submitted an article today that had a neat little fact in it. So I covered NextEra's quarterly numbers.
Yeah.
And in it, and the reason I was excited because they're always like hitting home runs, but it was cool because one of the talking points in the conversation was that they had one company, Tim, has a 250 gigawatt pipeline. 145 gigawatts has interconnection positions stored or secured.
You're talking about NextEra has a 250
NextEra.
gigawatt?
Yes, sir. That's
Yeah.
it. One
Yeah.
company.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Tim.
I know.
It's like good job, Nextera. I mean,
Yeah.
geez, and so they got the land. We got the land. We got almost 2 terawatts of projects in the interconnection queues. So anyway, let's move it on. We only got a few more minutes to take care
Yeah.
of
We
our
only
people.
got one or two more stories, so choose wisely.
Uh, well, you know what? We haven't done a solar tech one. Can I do a solar tech one? It's a really,
Sure.
really little simple one. So the next one.
Super
So
thin
there's a
wafers.
yeah, super thin wafers. So a company, a Chinese manufacturer whose name I've seen out there. I don't know them very well, but they said that they're now selling a wafer that's 110 micrometers thick or thin, might be the word. And 110 is about 27% less poly per, about 27% thinner than the standard 150, 160, 170-ish micrometers. And so that's interesting because polysilicon is the number one cost in a module. You have to make the poly, you got to turn it into wafer, you got to turn it into a cell, then you got to install it. And if you got 27% less poly in your cell because you have a thinner cell, hypothetically it should be cheaper. Hopefully your yield rates on your wafers, meaning they don't break because they're too thin and the machines can't work with them. Because that's really what I've heard, is that the wafers get so thin, the manufacturing lines that are picking them up and cutting them, they're too thin, they're too brittle. So this is interesting. A 110 micrometer thick solar cell that has 27% less poly, takes 27% less electricity, 27% less CO2 per watt, per output. And,
Hmm.
that's just cool tech. And I want everybody to have 110 micrometer solar cells.
I mean, super thin sounds good, but it also is a double edge, right? It could
It's
be.
it could
It
break.
could. It could. It could break. And Brian Grenko pointed out on our webinar on Tuesday about solar asset performance that places like Texas are now experiencing several 2-inch hailstorms a year, and we showed those photos from Nebraska. I think it was Nebraska, but yeah, it's the module's getting bigger and everything getting lighter and thinner. It's a double edge, but sounds cool. Sounds cool.
Yeah,
I'm with you.
I like it.
I'm with
I
you.
like it. Uh,
One more.
one more. So we could do micro satellites in space. We could do a national charging network from a whole bunch of car people.
Yeah, let's talk about the network, the charging network.
That one's big. I think so.
Is
So
that the BMW group?
yeah, I was kind of surprised because this is like, I guess this balances out Ford and maybe GM or somebody, Ford and someone else who went with the Tesla line. But BMW, GM, Honda, Hyundai, Kia, Mercedes, and Stellantis, who I don't know what they make, but I think that's like they bought somebody, a U.S. person. They might have bought a Dodge or something. But 7 big groups are making a nationwide high-speed charger, and they're going to do both of the standards, the CCS and the NACS. The CCS is, I believe that's like what's used across the whole world, and then North American standard. I think that's what Tesla does. Tesla charging standard. Yeah, North American. So Tesla is NACS, and CCS is the one that everyone else uses. Like in my Hyundai, I have a CCS. In my former Tesla, I had an NACS. And
Yeah.
so
Couldn't we
they're going to
just
make
go
it
to
with both.
one standard?
I don't know. I know. That's
Come on,
that's not how it
people.
works.
I really think we need to do this. I don't know what we're waiting for, because I think it's going to happen. Just like you saw, in cell phones, right? Apple now went to USB-C, because
They had to-
consumers don't like having all these different cords.
They're annoying.
Yeah, they are.
I like the USB-C cords. They're very clean. You never have to worry about which side to put in. So if they can
Yep.
figure that out with the chargers, that'd be great. especially if they could have if if Electrify America could have the same uptime as the Tesla network, that'd be pretty sweet. As of yet, they're a little not. So
Yeah.
so they got to
So
work on
of
that.
this, do you recall though, John? 30,000 chargers sounds like a lot, but how many chargers do we need? It's
I
hundreds of
believe
thousands.
I think we need for high speed about 180,000. And in fact, I
Yeah.
think if we go to the bottom of that press release, let's scroll down. I believe they specifically referenced the NREL study
Mm.
that talks about Open Network Drive America 182. Okay, the National Renewable
Oh,
Energy Laboratory.
182,000. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. By 2030. So this is 30,000 by 2030. Um, so and roughly right now they say there's 32,000 publicly available fast chargers.
So that's 16% of the goal. So it's good. It's a chunk.
Yep.
I'll accept that.
Tim Montague approved. Bing.
All
There
right,
you go.
John. Well, we've come to the end of our time, and we want to know. We want to know, John, how on earth can we reach you, though?
Commercialsolarguy.com. We got a contact us page. You could use that, please. And then we also have a phone number. You can ring us. We're on Twitter, Solar in Mass. We're on LinkedIn. You can visit me in Boston. We got an office in New Bedford.
How long is
And
it going to take you to say we're on X?
X. Oh man, I'm really slow with all this cool
We're on X.
newfangled.
I don't know. That
Yeah.
doesn't have a very good ring to it. I
I don't mind
appreciate
saying Zeet. Zeet sounds cool. I
I,
would
I
say
appreciate
Zeet.
what Elon is trying to do, like create an app for everything, like WeChat, um, for payments and for banking and tweeting. But I don't know. I can't get excited about saying we're on X.
Zeets. I think Zeeting sounds cool.
That's a good word. Well, you can find us at cleanpowerhour.com. Check out the media kit. Check out the About Us page where we have the listener survey. Please fill out the listener survey. I'll send you a hat with that beautiful Clean Power Hour logo on it, on said hat, if you do that. And give us a rating and a review on Apple. Tell your friends about the show. Chris and Joe are here every week. We want more people to be here with you, Chris and Joe. You're very lonely, Chris and Joe. You need more friends. So we need to clone you guys. So tell your friends about the show, and really that's it. I look forward to seeing you all in Colorado, and check out our show on August 10th with Sean White. That's going to be a goodie. Have you ever met Sean, John?
I don't think so. I don't think so. There's a lot of people, man. So many people in the world.
Yeah.
I got to meet more. I got to shake more hands. We'll meet Sean sometime.
Yep. Well, you can meet him at RE Plus.
Well, I will be at RE Plus.
Yes, you will. In September.
So, see you in September. Sorry.
All right. I'm Tim Montague. Let's grow solar and storage. Thanks, John.